Hey guys, it's Tuesday, October 8th, 2013. Now this is a very special episode. It's for school, which is why it's so long. Now the government's bad, we know that. It's actually closed right now, which is embarrassing and a little ridiculous. But there's something those madmen in Washington do, both left and right, that just makes me want to pull a Joshua Norton and write a letter to Congress demanding they disband immediately. Is it the apparent glee with which they failed to address the national debt? Well, yes, but no. Is it their willingness to spy on the American public? Yes, but no. What about the hot mess that is healthcare in this country? There is that, but it's still not what I'm getting at. Is it the mire of debt they have us sinking into because of student loans and a failure to reform education? There's that too, but it's still not what I'm getting at. Wait, is it their willingness to treat corporations as people? Oh my god, other me, that is so stupid, but it is not that either. Wait a minute, this isn't gonna be another rant about how pizza isn't a vegetable, is it? Actually, it isn't that either, and I know it's been a while, but that whole pizza as a vegetable thing is hilarious. On top of all the other reasons that make me want to sit our government down and just cry at them, is what they, and in fairness, news anchors, have done to the word rhetoric. I know most of you are looking at me like I'm crazy right now, like I'm someone who's talking about an issue that isn't an issue, but as a writer, as someone who values intelligent, rational discourse, and as a citizen of this once and future great country, stop it! All of you. Stop saying, that politician used some fancy rhetoric to win this argument, like he's some sort of wizard. Stop blaming the opposing party for their use of sneaky, dastardly rhetoric like it's some sort of chemical weapon and we need to drag them in front of the UN, because rhetoric isn't a chemical weapon. All rhetoric is a framework for structuring your arguments in both formal and everyday speech. Can it get a little fancy? Yes. Your text messages use rhetoric, your teachers use rhetoric, Shakespeare uses rhetoric, the ice cream truck uses rhetoric, and I am using rhetoric right now. Notice the repeating sentence structure? Deliberate rhetorical choice. Right there. All rhetoric is the application of everything you've learned in English class. It is to grammar what calculus is to arithmetic. And you know what? I would rather politicians use rhetoric to settle their differences as opposed to, oh, I don't know, missiles. Because those are really our only two choices here. Either we talk about our problems like civilized people, or we try to kill each other. And I don't know about you, but I would rather have healthcare reform settled by means other than intercontinental ballistic missile. You see, rhetoric isn't some fell sorcery, and it isn't by definition some politician's trickery. All it is a tool for making informed and calculated arguments and for understanding those arguments. And you can't get away from it. It is literally everywhere. You cannot write a sentence or send a text message or read a billboard without accidentally employing rhetoric. It's like the Force. It binds the world together, and those who abuse it are the Dark Lords of the Sith. I should surprise absolutely no one. Rhetoric as we use it in the West was first codified by, you guessed it, Aristotle, who I still haven't forgiven for deciding that all non-Greeks should be slaves and for messing up the way we do science in the West for well over 2,000 years, but I'm getting off topic. But Aristotle did get this one right, well, along with the help of Socrates, Plato, and a few crazy sophists. But I do have to give him this one. My hatred for Aristotle aside, you will doubtless recall from your middle school history classes that the ancient Greeks, specifically the ancient Athenians, practiced the world's first form of formalized democracy. And in their democracy, as in ours, there was nothing more important to the smooth and continued functioning of their society than a well-informed electorate. Granted, their electorate was all property-owning men, so women, poor people, foreigners, and slaves need not apply. But they got this right, and being a well-informed citizen of Athens or of America or of Great Britain or of any of the modern democratic states in the world depends not only on understanding what is going on, but on understanding how those in power convey their messages. Which, if you think about it, is part of what's gone so horribly wrong in this country in the past 20 years. We've started vilifying rhetoric and intelligence in general. As a consequence, we've abandoned reasonable discourse in favor of increasingly polarized political opinions, which has led to a country where people can seriously ask that science not be taught in their schools because it's violating their religious principles, which is just crazy. That being said, there are definitely some Redders out there in the political arena you should watch out for. So really quickly, I'm going to run through a few tips to demystify the dark and terrifyingly arcane sorcery that is rhetoric. The single most important thing in rhetoric is something called kairos. I know, if they wanted to give the impression that rhetoric wasn't some sort of magical art, they shouldn't have given everything in it names like kairos, hendiades, and stichomythia. May as well have called everything Sectum Sempra, Flipendo, and Quidditch. Anyway, if you've seen the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and you should, you may recall that Jack Sparrow is always talking about opportune moments. That is Kairos. Kairos is the opportune moment, but more than that, it is seizing that opportune moment and applying the appropriate rhetorical technique for that moment. Think timing for a joke, and how a joke completely falls apart if you fail to correctly time the punchline. That is Kairos in its purest and most obvious form. It's more subtle in serious or dramatic presentations when you're going for a reaction that is less obvious than laughter, but Kairos is still there, the moment you need to seize in order to change the way a person or a crowd is thinking is still there. All conversation is about timing. It is about finding the exact right thing to say at exactly the right time in order to influence people. It should be noted that that is how it was very easy to get everyone to back the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001 following September the 11th, but how it was a lot harder to get people to get behind the Iraq War, a little bit later. The moment was gone. But let's look at something lighter. My favorite rhetorical device is something called stichomythia, which is not a curse for turning your opponents into newts. It's actually a technique for mirroring responses in dialogue so that you get these really snappy comebacks. You see it all the time in TV and movies and in plays. My favorite example is in this episode of Doctor Who where this evil planet, I know it sounds ridiculous, but the planet is evil, says to the Doctor, "Fear me, I have killed hundreds of Time Lords." To which the Doctor replies, "Fear me, I've killed all of them." You can really tell I'm a nerd, can't you? But I digress. In the case of the Doctor Who quote, the stichomythia serves to give the Doctor a brief, intelligent, and dramatic response to the situation at hand, which in turn reminds the audience that this is the Doctor we're dealing with. He's got this. But if you want a real-world and less awesome example, just watch any political debate. You see this thing all the time, and it always serves to make the person with the comeback look really clever and witty, even though they're just being half a copycat. Now, those are just a couple of rhetorical facts. There are dozens of rhetorical devices and dozens of styles of sentences, and every single one of those has a very specific function for affecting the minds of those reading or listening to the sentence. And while rhetoric isn't literally a kind of magic, you should always be asking yourself, why is this person saying these things? And more importantly, why is this person saying these things the way they are saying them? And until next time, see you out there.